So today we're looking at the 2025 Harley-Davidson Street Bob. Now at first glance it looks quite familiar, almost identical to the 2024 version. But don't be fooled, in many ways this 2025 model is a completely different machine. Let's start as usual by going through some numbers so you get a sense of the scale of the bike. Seat height is 680 millimeters, 293 kilograms wet. The engine is a 1923cc V-Twin. It makes about 98 horsepower at 4,600 RPM and about 163 Newton meters of torque at 2,500 RPM. Fuel capacity is 13.2 liters and the bike retails for about $63,000 without COE or insurance. As mentioned, there have been quite a few changes made to the 2025 model, although they may not be apparent at first glance. The switchgear is all new, the display is new as well, and the engine gets chrome trim instead of the usual all-black treatment. The exhaust is also a 2-in-1 system now, and the bike gets full LED lighting across the board. Where the Street Bob used to be all about minimalism, I find that's not quite the case anymore in 2025. The bike now gets a full set of rider aids, including cruise control, traction control, even cornering ABS. And honestly, I find this makes the bike a bit more versatile, much less of a compromise. First, let's see what it's like to move around at parking lot speeds. At almost 300 kilos, the bike should be a bit intimidating to move around, but thanks to the low seat height and the way the bike just carries its weight, it's actually quite manageable. Even on a bit of an incline, I never really felt that it was too much of a struggle. And that's the thing about the Street Bob. It looks heavy on paper, but in practice, it's really not trying to tip you over the way some taller, heavier bikes do. It just feels really planted and confidence-inspiring. So on the move, the Street Bob steers more quickly than you might expect, especially for a bike that's long and low and equipped with mini ape hanger bars. It's not twitchy or ultra quick by any means, and you do have to work the bars, especially at very low speeds. But there is a benefit though. These bars rise above most car mirrors, which makes lane splitting a bit easier. Lane splitting itself is quite doable because this bike isn't overly wide, but it does demand a bit of focus. The brakes are powerful, but they're not especially sharp or instant. And because of its size, quick swerves are not its strong point. The bike leans willingly, just not instantly. So concentration is key if you plan to lane split and lane split quickly. Overall steering responsiveness is definitely there. The stretch of the bars is quite long, and at full steering lock you really do notice it. Now for the tight turning test, the multi-story car park spiral. And this is where the Street Bob really surprises. Despite the geometry and weight, it really breezes through this test. You definitely do feel the mass, but it doesn't seem to hinder steering as much as you might expect. Again, the low seat height and low center of mass help a lot. Ground clearance is decent too. The lean angle limit is about 28.5 degrees, which is definitely not great for a sport bike, but it's quite respectable for a cruiser. Personally, I didn't scrape anything while cornering, and I wasn't actually trying to keep it as upright as possible. Just riding this bike around, the fueling is absolutely faultless. There's plenty of power and it comes in right from idle. There are no flat spots No hesitation, just smooth, predictable, instantaneous drive. The sweet spot for this motorcycle seems to be between 2000 and 4000 RPM, which is perfect for city riding. In fact, I'm spending most of the time between 2000 and 3000 RPM, right where peak torque is. Cruising at 80 km/h in top gear, this bike's just taking over at 1800 RPM, so just above idle. And yet, even at that speed, twist the throttle a little and this bike rockets forward like a muscle bike. In fact, at low revs in high gear, it will pretty much out-accelerate most bikes. And that's no exaggeration. Now, apart from the bigger engine, the second big update for 2025 is the addition of riding modes. So rather than a one-size-fit-all fuel map, you get a choice of 3 riding modes: rain, road, and sport. This basically means that now, with the press of a button, you can make the bike docile or aggressive depending on conditions. I mostly left it in road mode, and even then it's still quite aggressive. You really do have to be careful with the throttle. In sport mode, the bike becomes revvier and buzzier, and the throttle is razor sharp. The bike just wants to leap forward even at small throttle openings. Now at a glance, the fins make it look like a traditional air-cooled Harley, but this is actually a hybrid system. The cylinder heads on this bike are water-cooled, and this helps keep heat off the rider even in stop-and-go traffic. And having said that, you don't really feel the heat emanating from this engine so long as the bike is moving. I found that things did get a bit warm if I had to sit at a traffic light for more than 30 seconds. It never got unbearable, it's just something you notice. The suspension on the Street Bob also does a pretty good job. It's comfortable without being soft and stable without being harsh. The gearbox is slick and the shifts are smooth, and the ride quality makes this feel like a bike you could actually go touring on. Although that 13-litre tank means you might need to stop a little bit more often. Harley claim about 20 km per litre fuel economy. So I'm thinking maybe of 200 kilometers before the low fuel light comes on. Of course, that kind of range is nothing to shout about, but it is impressive for such a big motor attached to such a small tank. So what stands out about the new Street Bob? 2 qualities. First, that monster 117 cubic inch engine means there's torque everywhere, right off idle. And second, the addition of riding modes, which completely changes the bike's personality. It still feels very much like a Harley. It's no longer that bare-bones low-tech bobber of last year. The new electronics make this a genuinely versatile machine that can cruise, corner, and even commute. It's like having 3 personalities in one bike. So overall, I really enjoyed my time aboard this bike, even in city riding. At nearly 300 kilograms, the Street Bob is undeniably heavy. Fortunately, not so heavy that it ever feels intimidating in traffic or awkward in car parks. It does carry its weight with surprising ease. It also has an engine that delivers huge torque right off idle, which means ferocious acceleration even with the slightest twist of the throttle. And yet, with a quick tap of a button to change riding modes, it settles into an easy, relaxed cruise, smooth, composed, and completely unbothered. So, in the end, it's heavy, it's fast, and it's surprisingly easy to live with. But the price tag may be a little harder to handle. That's it from me. See you in the next vid.